We quickly want to look at some logistics for a prayer journey. I did not really want to make this DVD series about that because there's a lot of places you can learn about that, and by trial and error you learn anyway. But we will just go through the process very quickly. It is in the book. Just to remind you of what you do need to look at when you do a prayer journey, what logistics are important. Okay, so firstly, we've already said that as part of your logistics, you will have to do a project advertising and a vision casting process. I've put in the addendum on page A, just an example of what we put out normally on email. So whether you do it via email or pamphlets, whichever way you advertise, it will always be determined by what the project will be. If you're going to a closed country, you don't want to declare to everybody, I'm going to Iran with a team to do the work of the Lord. It's not wise because it's not a country where Christians are welcome. So those type of things, you need a lot of wisdom. I know of teams that get a code word for that country, and the project becomes we're going to this code word country, so that we keep things under wrap. So whatever is important in that process, you need to be wise, and you need to understand the type of country that you go into. Okay, then there's the registration process. I always feel this process is important because it's a way for people to be connected to the commitment of being part of a project. If they have to fill in a form and pay a deposit, they have exercised their faith, and God can start pulling them in and connecting them to this project. So even though I have had people come with me to France many years, every year I ask of them to fill in a registration form. And then they say, but you have my information. I say, it's not about your information. Just fill it in and send it to me. I'm trying to get them really to commit to that project. So we have different forms. I have an example for you also, again, with the addendums in your booklet. On page D of the addendums, that's how our registration forms look like. The information that I require on that registration form would be all the information I will need from beginning to end. Many people that fill it in ask, why do you need that? I know why I need it. I just ask them to fill it in. So that's sort of how our registration form looks like. We ask of them in the next page to fill in a bit of additional information, background on who they are, how do they think they can contribute to this team, what congregation are they in, have they ever been on such a type of tour, who led that tour, any information that gives us a bit of background on the person and what their experience is, what their skill set is. And then we also have a faith declaration. We don't want funny religious sectarian activities happening under our project. So that's just a basic biblical faith agreement. We agree on the following things. This is scriptural. This Jesus Christ saves, just so we have a declaration of we all agree on these things. We don't want to go on a journey and then sit with the basic, not having the basic things in place of agreement. Deposits that need to be paid, that's part of the logistics that you will have to handle. The outlay of costs, a small little budget, how you're seeing this journey going to cost, those type of things you give to the people as they need it, and any due dates that you have ready when what will be expected of them. And then we ask them to commit to a process, a 12-week process of preparing and coming together on a weekly basis. We have really been so adamant that we have said to people, listen, if you do not commit to this preparation process, we are sorry that you cannot be part of the team, because there is just so much that we do there that we've already shared with you. Good. Then the preparation meetings. There's a lot of logistics that have to take place there. Things like the spiritual process that you want to follow. If there are teachings, for instance, that need to go, that you want to implement. Prayer. If we have 10 cities we must pray through on 12 weeks, you need to logistically make sure, okay, you book time for each one of those things, and the stuff are written, typed up, gotten ready in a booklet. What teachings do you want to go through, and how you're going to make it available to the team? Team building stuff that you need to put in place. Admin and travel plans. That would include things like what would be the route that we follow through the country. Now that can also be subjected to a prayer process before you fasten those things, but those are logistics you'll need to fasten. What places will we visit? How long will we be in what place? And how will we travel from each place to the next? We will look at personal issues that needs to be addressed within the team. Are there any personal stuff that needs to be sorted? I mean, we've had interesting stuff from, when we have to do our visa application, people need to have a proof they have enough money. So we have had money go from UPF to an individual's account, so he has the proof, so he pays it back into the account, just so we can get them to go with. So there's many times personal issues that we want to see sorted out, that the person can be released. Responsibilities in the team, to dish that out and to see to it that everyone starts doing that. If we decide in an early stage who's the scribe, that person becomes the person that must write everything down in our meetings. They must get into that function. Then the correspondence, that always takes a lot of time for me to correspond with the French or whoever is in the other country to find out, can they receive us, will the dates fit them. They want to know, when will we arrive, what meals do we need, how many people are we men and women, so they can arrange for sleeping. So just the correspondence, especially if you need it in a different language, because I need to get my letters into French, it's a lot of work. And as a team leader, you will really have to give attention to that, whoever you have to correspond with. Then we have an indemnity form in page G, your addendum. It's an example of our indemnity form, to make sure that you don't have any legal troubles later on if somebody is not happy with you. It's very wise to make sure that you've got all these things in place, because people need to know that it's their own responsibility, that they cannot put things on you. So this is protection for yourself. We would really advise that you have a sending back policy, meaning if Susie that goes with you on the team, you get to the other side and she is so disruptive and she's causing so much damage that you can tell her, okay, you go back to South Africa. We're not going to allow you to further go on with us on this tour. It's not a nice topic to talk about, but I do believe there should be a policy that's in place that everybody knows, if I'm on this team, I can be sent back if I am disruptive and cause the team to not be able to get the job done. I've always wondered whether I would have the guts to do this, and sure, God created the opportunity. And one year we had a guy that really, he started attacking the local believers that received us. He started attacking team members verbally and did not want to submit to authority, and started telling us, if we do not do what the Spirit told him we must do, we will have a terrible tour and bad things will happen to us. And he just was not willing to submit, and we had to send him back. Luckily we had the policy in place, and everybody agreed that's the way it works. So I think it's very wise to have that exit strategy for a person that is busy really causing damage. Next, logistical things that you will do, plane tickets, or to get to that country. It will not always be plane tickets, it might sometimes be a bus ticket or whatever else, but getting those things organized, whether through a travel agent or doing it yourself, it can be quite a lot of effort and logistics, especially if you sit with team members that have all their own requirements. Okay, I will leave the team, I first want to go to that country, I want to stay 2 days longer, and what. I always say that's not preferable. I always prefer a team to start together and to finish together on home soil, but we are not dictators. Sometimes we have to give people a bit of flexibility, but that causes a lot of work for the person that organizes it. And then extremely important for us is the prayer support that needs to be raised for the team that is going. And I would like Francois to maybe just come and comment on that, as he has been a coordinator, prayer coordinator for teams many times. We have, you will see on page H, you have a sponsorship form. I forgot to speak about that. In our registration process, we ask people, do they need a form with which they can go and get sponsors if God speaks to them to do that way? Okay, Francois, hier gou kom sê. This is extremely important. We have seen the value of getting prayer support here for a team that has to go and pray in another nation. Because a team that goes to pray there cannot focus on praying for themselves. They need to get the job done. And the prayer support will then be the people that will back them so that they can get their job done. Okay.
on this side and they are on that side, and all the prayer support is somewhere scattered all over South Africa or even in France or in another country for that case. A few things that I have seen is, and that I've experienced and that I've kind of developed for myself, is I think the first thing when you're a coordinator or you're the anchor, you need to see yourself as part of the team. It's very easy to feel distant because you are alone. That's true. You know, you get SMSs at 2 o'clock in the morning, and you get things late at night or early in the morning. But the main thing is see yourself as part of the team. So you need to do whatever you need to do at the time that is relevant. The second thing that I picked up, and it was only about from the second one that I did, was it is important to know the mandate of the team. So I would say that it is maybe good for the person who's going to anchor for you that you bring that person at least into 1 or 2 of your meetings, so that the person will meet the others in your team, so that they also know who are they busy sending messages to, at least. Then obviously you need to be connected, technology-wise. You need to have a cell phone, you need to have your laptop or your desktop computer, and you need to, first of all, long before they leave, you need to get all the mobile numbers, all the cell phone numbers. You also need to get all the SMS addresses, all the email addresses. And that's very important because what you usually find is that there's 1 or 2 numbers with a typo in it. And you need to work through the emails. It's best to actually have an email address as well as an SMS address for that particular person, because then you can actually trace them in some way. What I've also found is that when you send emails, send a blank copy. I had a few people coming hard down on me when I sent once. I actually think I forgot, and I sent it not as a blank copy. And lo and behold, I think within 10 minutes I had an email to say, please don't do this. And, you know, fair comment kind of thing. So blank copies maybe, in my experience, the best. Then also have a map. Know the itinerary. Know where they are. Make sure that you give some information ahead of when they get to a place, if you can, on email. Try to build a relationship with those that you are talking to. Obviously on this side, the prayer support group, as well as the team working on the other side. What I found is that you need to be alert, you need to be expectant, and there must be a certain rhythm. So in other words, you're busy working, you're going through your normal daily things, but you need to check every now and then, did something come through? And many times things come through from the prayer support team, and you need to send it immediately, particularly if people are on the way to a place and there's actually a word for where they're going to land today, kind of thing. That's not if they don't take the wrong route, as happened once. Your job is really to create flow. You really need to be quick in the handover. Receive it from the one side, send it to the other side. My job is not to try and unravel it or understand it or to try and be very spiritual about it. My job is to pass one message from one side to the other side. And then obviously to pray for them. That's what I actually found very interesting. The more I started to work as the anchor, the more I got involved with the group from where I was, kind of thing. And then just one thing, there are certain extremes. I've experienced one extreme, and that was when we had to actually inform somebody that a close friend has died, for instance. So how do you do that? You know, do you just send an SMS and say, tell so-and-so that this has happened? Or how did you? What I did was I actually went to the leader of the team and said, make sure that you have the phone on you. So I sent an SMS and said, make sure you have once you have the phone, send an SMS back. So I sent the message, and ultimately I said, it's your choice. You know where you are. Make sure that you tell the person when the moment is right. But at the end of the day, it's actually a very exciting role to play. It's also something that really pulls you into going on a prayer team maybe later on. You know, this is one experience of how prayer teams work, and ultimately you end up doing it yourself. Thanks.
I would say this is one of the most important facets that you need to get organized on this side. We always give a prayer support form to our team members. You will find that on page M. And we tell them you have to get at least 10 people that will be praying for us as a team while we're overseas. And we often have between 100 and 150 intercessors just praying for that little team for what they are doing. And the job that you need to get done, as Francois shared, is You need to get an email group established, and you need to get a bulk SMS group established so that there can be regular communication. We want to, if we ask people to pray for us, we want to keep them praying. We need to put wood on their fire. They need to hear from us on a daily basis. And the SMS that we send through needs to make sense. It needs to give direction. It needs to give some information and how the team. You really need wisdom. You can't send nonsensical stuff to your intercessors. They must be praying, because we have found our success is so much dependent on that group that is praying for us at home. So getting that system set up is a very important part, and having an anchor, an individual that says, I will be the go-to man. I will see to it that there's a facilitation of the information that you send to the intercessors, and I will see to it that whatever the intercessors want to communicate to you, that you get it as quickly as possible, because we have found that is very important for that information to flow as quickly as possible. What's nice about emails, why we also want to do the emails, because with emails you can give more information. We normally have a booklet where we have the information on the towns and cities that we would visit. I like to give my prayer coordinator a PDF copy, and they can easily copy a few pages per go and say, okay, the team is going to this town. Here's the information on that town if you're interested to read up about it, so you know how to pray for the team because they are in that area. And it's so nice. We do the SMSs on a daily basis, and the emails we tend to give to the coordinator to do as he feels. And sometimes if we get time, which is very difficult, every 5th or 6th day, we would try to quickly write a summary email of how things went so far, so that at least we can give some feedback and not just ask, pray, 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 yes, demons or whatever, and they never hear, did it work out? What happened? Are you guys all right? So an email is in a nice way to just give a bit of a feedback, maybe twice in the tour, so that they can know what has happened so far. So this is an extremely important part of the logistics that I believe every team should have in place before they leave the country. Finances always have a lot of logistical work to that. Before the prayer journey, obviously you need to have a financial policy. I think this is important to be clear. You will see that I've put it in your addendums at page K. This is the financial policy of UPF. We want to give clarity to every team member that they know how we handle finances, so that there's no surprises. Nobody can come back and say, but I didn't know, or I don't like the way you do it. You have this from the beginning available to them, and you say, this is how we're going to handle finances, and this is what we believe we should do. We should have a budget, from the beginning budget of why the team money or the tour money will be so much, to a detailed budget before you travel, so you know how much you think you'll spend on everything. Cash and credit cards, how will you, what are the different options, how are you going to use money and do payments once you are on that journey. That needs to be really figured out, because there are different, every nation has a different thing that will work for you. We tend to not want to use traveler's checks. We just found it's such a slip to get them exchanged, because most of the time we're not in the big cities, we're moving around. So we tend to use cash and credit cards. But you have to decide logistically how you will handle those things and how you will get money exchanged in order for you to go to that nation. During the prayer journey, there's obviously the keeping record of money used, cash and slips, and knowing what you have in hand and what you still need. We always have a policy of keeping cash in our group to see to it that not one person has all the money, because if he loses it, we don't have anything left. So we tend to take the money and divide it up and put it in envelopes and say, okay, well, you keep so much of the money, so much of the money, so much of the money. And so as the financial person works, he will call in those envelopes to put them into the kitty, because he doesn't want everything with him. That's just a way, and we've, praise God, never lost any money, so that's wonderful. Then there's finances after the prayer journey, where you will have to do a detailed report, so that if anybody wants to know what did you spend what on, you can give it to them, and then the decision on what needs to be done with any money that's left. That is, again, dependent on the person or the group that's doing the prayer journey. We have made a policy in UPF that if there's money left, it goes right back into UPF, because we believe people gave it for the vision. There has been times where we felt, no, we'll pay it back to the team members, but that's a decision that needs to be made also as the Spirit leads us. Then any logistics to a ministry outreach, as Annette shared with us, where they go to Botswana and they do an outreach thing to practice to see how they will flow together as a team. Obviously there's quite a lot of logistics that run that you'll need to get in place for that. Logistics to get a team weekend, get the dates fast and get a place where you'll go as a team for the weekend to prepare and be away from other things that can hinder you. There's a bit of planning that needs to happen there. And then, because at the team weekend you have an extended time with one another, we have found that without that weekend we would have not been the team that we needed to be. Then there's the big process of getting visas in place, visa applications, forms that need to be filled in, documentation, financial proof, paying for those appointments, making those appointments, collecting of passports. There's even, you know, some visa applications you first need to get certain shots and be vaccinated or whatever. So that's also a whole process, and we tend to try and get the group to prepare together for this, because if everybody does it on their own, it's difficult, and we get it done together so that it's not a nice process. Identification documents, the importance of seeing to it that copies are made of your passport and maybe even your ID, and having those copies distributed in the team, that if your passport is stolen, there's a way for you to prove that you are who you are, and for an embassy to be able to help you to get back into the country. We've had, poor Crystal has experienced this quite a few times, and she says she'll never again go without those copies, because it creates just so much trouble if you don't have it. Even having those copies scanned and having your prayer person, for instance, have it so that they can email it if it is needed, that's very important, because once you lose your passport in another country, you are a nobody, and it's very difficult for you to get back home. Accommodation, a lot of logistics go into accommodation, organizing if you have to stay in hotels or guest houses or local believers. All of that will need logistical support and planning to happen. Transport and navigation, booking of trains or cars or flights or boats or whatever you're going to need to move around. That can be really a nightmare to figure out and needs to be done ahead of time. All documentation that will be needed in order for you to do that. I hate all the papers I always have to schlep around. I always look like a donkey with everything that I'm carrying, but you need it in order to do it. And it's an important part of the logistics. International driver's license, what you need if you have to drive overseas, or if you have to make use of their transport. Payments, for instance, you can't hire a car without a credit card. That causes a lot of other logistical things that you need to sort out. Meals and food needs. How are you going to sort that out logistically for your team ahead of time? How are you going to buy food? How are you going to prepare food if you have to buy food that you have to prepare yourself? And what would be the cost and the accessibility of food where you are going to be? Those things need to be sorted out. And then, as we've just spoken, the importance of communication. Firstly, inside the country that you will be in. Many times we have to phone local people to say we will be there at 2 o'clock, or something happened, we're a bit late, and then we need a way to phone. You can't phone on a South African phone that phones back to South Africa and then to France, and then you pay how many thousands rands when you come back. You need to know what's going to work for you in that. Can you get a SIM card? Is there a cheap way for you to get hold of people in that manner? And then also internationally, how can I communicate with home? Not just as a team to the intercessors, though that's the most important part, but many times if we have to phone family members and make contact with them, we need to figure out how's the cheapest way to do that without causing anybody damage of paying thousands of rands when they come back home. Research information, there's a lot of logistics that go into that. Gathering of spiritual information, putting it together, things like prophecies over the country, sins, country historical info, cultural and religious info, town and cities info, and then travel tips. We have all of that in our booklets when we go to a country. Travel tips, what to pack, how to pack. When you're flying, this is wise. When you're traveling, this is wise. Your suitcase size, what, all those small little things that can really become a big problem if you've not prepared your team on that. It takes time and effort. Luckily, I mean, for instance, a lot of those things we have in our booklet. So it's just things you can replicate and just add on to. But it's still things you need to invest time into. We want our team to be informed if they go, simply because I feel that's part of our responsibility of what we can do. Then daily updating intercessors while you are there, just that they may know how the team is doing, what they should pray for that day, and then for them to be able to communicate words back to you. This has been astounding to us. I remember the one year we were not far from the city of Rennes, praying at the fountain of what they call Fountain of Merlin. And there's a lot, when we got there were a whole lot of new agers searching for water with their little tricks and whatever. It was not a kosher place to be in. And while we were standing there, just as we started praying, an SMS came through from an intercessor. And the scripture she sent spoke about your sorceries and your murmuring spirits, and it was just exactly speaking into the situation we were in. We were astounded that God could use people on this side that didn't have a clue, they didn't even know where we were, but they were obedient to send us the words that they received, and it gave us tools and weapons to work with while we were there. So that's a wonderful thing. Then the logistics into debriefing process, a date after your return, have that. We already set that date before we go overseas, that every team member has already put that date on their diary. We have also a debriefing form that we want people to fill in. That gives you some time to think, and it's always good if you get a written feedback. It's page O, on what they say they experienced on the tour. That helps me as a leader on a later stage, and then we get an outside person, and we organize an outside person, normally with some counseling background, to debrief our team. And then the last thing that we do is we go through a report back. That takes a lot of time to report, to get a report together, to prepare PowerPoint and a feedback meeting. We normally have eats and drinks, and we sort of want to bless our intercessors and those that supported us with our feedback, make a bit of a celebration from that, and that takes some organization. Getting a report together is a lot of work. It normally takes a few months for us to get that finished, but that is also something that I believe is important in the logistics. Normally if you come back sort of tired and you're not in the mood for this, but for later years it becomes very important for us to be able to go back to what the Holy Spirit has said. So quickly going through logistics, those are the logistics that we have to look at, I believe, in a prayer journey process for us to be effective in getting the job done and not being hampered by the administration and the logistics that needs to be done. Thank you.